Okay, so I could start early, I guess, if you don't mind. So I'm Harry Halpin. I'm the co-founder of Nym, and we'll be presenting. Nym is a mixnet. Just wondering how many people here know what a mixnet is or have heard of one. Okay, cool. Well, that's okay. We'll give you the basic description. How many people here, does anyone here run a Ethereum 2? Everyone knows what a validator is, correct? Do you know what an Ethereum 2 validator is? Does anyone run one by any chance? You don't have to raise your hand, but we know who you are. Okay, so we're going to describe how the Nym mixnet can be used to basically solve some of the outstanding problems in Ethereum 2, because as well known, Ethereum 2 is super fun to play with, but has some of the worst privacy of any blockchain. And unfortunately, this can be used to disrupt Ethereum 2 Consensus, which, you know, can happen. And we would like to prevent that. So I'm Harry Halpin. I'm the CEO of Nym. I am very interested in surveillance because I was personally surveilled for many years due to climate change activism. So on a terrorist watch list, among other things. And I've been working on surveillance ever since. So the internet itself is broken. And it's, oh, parts of the slide didn't load. I don't know why. Okay, and my slides are broken as well. Let me see. So what our solution is to mass surveillance is what's called a mixnet. So what a mixnet is it uses, it's rather than like directly peer-to-peer gossip your traffic to another node, or I'm a client, you're a server, I send you some traffic, and you send me some traffic back. You know, like what we do is we build what's called an anonymous overlay network, similar to Tor, or I don't know what happened there, but wait a second. We build a network similar to Tor on top of the existing internet, and it has some features which do something which is quite remarkable, which is make internet traffic private even against an adversary, such as the NSA, that has us have God's eye view of the whole network. They can watch where every single packet is going, and there's no escaping this adversary. We do this through a number of tricks. One trick is pretty straightforward, which is multiple hops. You can also do this with Dandelion Plus and other, this is what Tor does, for example. But we add some things that Tor and Dandelion and others don't do, one of which is we add fake traffic. So if there's not enough traffic in the network, we add fake traffic, and that obfuscates the existing traffic in the network. Second thing is we're a mixed network. So packets in Tor or with a VPN or with Dandelion or whatever technique you use typically come first in, first out. You know, maybe there's some network churn, but typically that's what you get. In our solution, we've actually set it, the reason it's called a mixed network is so that you can mix the traffic. So the packets come in and they wait a certain amount of time in the mix, what's called a mixed node, a computer inside the mixnet. More traffic comes in, and those packets are mixed up like a deck of cards. They're also encrypted, so you can't tell them apart. And then they're released into the world. And this is kind of what it looks like. So if you look at a typical VPN here on the bottom, the timing and volume of the packets are clearly reflected for entering the VPN and exiting the VPN. So the VPN knows exactly what you're doing. You're just moving your trust from your computer to a VPN, which, I mean, may be useful to like download Netflix, but doesn't actually provide any privacy, so to speak of. With Tor, it's a bit better because it's a peer-to-peer network. So you see you're shuffling the traffic through 3 hops, but you can see that the timing and volume of the packets is revealed. So an adversary that's watching the entrance of you going into the Tor network and the exit can do a statistical correlation attack and de-anonymize you. On the other hand, Nym sends the traffic, individually routes each packet. So it's not a circuit, it's asynchronous message-based routing. And the traffic comes in and it's all kind of chopped up to be the same size and comes out. and the timing and the volume is hidden. So that's the big advantage. I don't know why that's not loading. So what we are trying to do here is we are trying to create a solution using Nym that can provide some level of validator privacy for Ethereum 2. And the way Ethereum 2 Consensus works, as probably everyone here knows, is you have the beacon chain, you separate consensus and execution, and you're basically gossiping who's got the next block. The coordination algorithm chooses the next validator, and then you pick one validator and it signs the block, and that validator then basically gets the block, gets the reward. Now there's some neat things that they do in Ethereum 2. They do separate to a large extent the validator identity from the network identity, but as Ethereum researchers have shown, it's pretty trivial to connect them. Basically because you look for the batched rewards, right? So, how do you know there's a validator behind my node or not? Well, it's pretty clear. Look at who gets the rewards. And because a lot of the algorithm is fundamentally deterministic, you can predict to a large extent who might get the next block, and then you can DDoS that node and knock them offline. So again, there's a number of big issues here. One is validator IP address collection. There was a big scandal on crypto Twitter when it got revealed Ethereum Foundation was indeed, or at least someone said, I don't know if it's true or not, that they're collecting these IP addresses. So this lets them, for example, censor validators or censor the rewards of validators. So maybe I'm running a validator in a country that no one else likes, then I may not get my rewards, I'm gonna get kicked out of consensus. So just the very fact that you reveal your IP address through this peer-to-peer gossip protocol can be used against you. And then even if no one uses it against you, on the Ethereum side of things, malicious actors can use that IP address against you by essentially launching a DDoS attack on your validator, because they know where you are, kind of know where you live. IP addresses are generally correlated to geographical location, and they can knock your validator offline. It hasn't happened yet, but you'd be surprised. When money's on the line, people can start doing crazy things. So our solution is to use the Nym mixnet. And in order to use the Nym mixnet, you have dev P2P and lib P2P. We chose lib P2P because it's a bit more used in more stacks. We need to integrate the Nym mixnet against lib P2P. And this was done jointly with ChainSafe, and it's done. You can go to the GitHub right there, and we'll tweet it shortly. And I'll look at our wonderful Rust lib P2P transport. So what it is it's a native. We basically made it so it's easy to use. If you're familiar with libp2p, a trait for libp2p that basically natively uses Nym. So you don't have to worry too much about Nym. All the complexity of Nym is hidden from you. You can just kind of turn it on inside of libp2p. It's in full Rust. You basically integrate Nym as a pluggable transport, and you get not just transport level guarantees, but you get privacy guarantees on the network layer. Now, you could solve validator privacy using consensus changes, but that may be even harder. And just to go a little bit of a deep dive while I have a second, so we abstract away from the complexity, and we have a full spec, thanks to Elizabeth from XChainspace. And you basically, you implement this abstract connection on top of libp2p. And there's a few things that make Nym and libp2p not really work well together. And we fix those. So for example, if I open up, I want to dial, and I want to gossip using libp2p, I need to open like essentially some sort of connection to you. And that connection needs to have a Nym address if you're using Nym. And then Nym does not guarantee message ordering, right? You remember sending all the packets one by one through the mixnet, and they're mixing up. So you want to guarantee message ordering. So we add a little nonce with the index-based counter on it to make sure that you basically can keep your messages in order. And we hide the addressing with a temporary 32-bit randomized identifier. And these kind of changes allow you to run multiple data streams, what's called a streaming mutex, on top of libp2p, and one of those streams can now be Nym. So that's basically the hard part of the integration to defend validators against validator attacks. Now, I think one question is which validator should we use? Does anyone here use Lighthouse? Any Lighthouse Rust users? So Lighthouse is the ETH2 validator software stack for the consensus, and it's built in Rust and licensed in Apache. And so we have instructions for using Nym. It's still, I would say, beta at least, but we'll tell you when it's ready to go. But you can play with it now. And then furthermore, I think the big question is, whenever you add an anonymizing layer on top of a transport stack, and you're trying to do something like produce blocks, the whole point of producing blocks is to produce them, particularly proof-of-stake networks, relatively quickly. So the question is, can we fit, how slow is the Nym mixnet, and can we fit it within the amount of time it takes to make a block? So these are some stats from a team called Lodestar, who are great folks. And they basically said you need 4 seconds in total for block production. And other less optimized anonymous solutions like Dandelion++ do not fit within that 4-second gap. And the 4 seconds can be divided. You have so there's some time you need, right? So you need 300 milliseconds to produce a block, 1,250 for a slot to receive the block from the network, and then 550 to process and validate the block, right? So we're already at 2 seconds. So the question is, can we speed the Nym mixnet up to fit within the remaining amount of time necessary? And the answer is yes. We currently run about 400 milliseconds, and we think we can pump it even faster, down to 300 milliseconds. So currently, the Nym mixnet does indeed fit within the total time needed for block production on Ethereum 2, at least according to the numbers from Lodestar and ChainSafe. And this makes it easy to add more anonymity to your block production. The speed of the mixnet is determined by the client software, so we don't tell you how much to mix. So if you just kind of speed it through as fast as possible, you get 300 or 400 milliseconds. Actually got 400 or 500 spare milliseconds, so you could mix it a bit more if you want to be more anonymous. And furthermore, we at Nym, although we haven't announced this yet, we are looking at a possible 2 to 4x speed up of the underlying mixnet shortly because, well, we have Daniel Bernstein working with us on optimizing the Curve 25519 Diffie-Hellmans, which is the thing that you use to communicate to the nodes to kind of give you the keys and encrypt the packets to send it through the mixnet. And we use a special Sphinx packet format, also used by Lightning and other networks. And this packet format is re-randomizable. So each hop randomizes and the ordering of the bytes kind of changes. You can't tell it's the same packet. So you can't attack the packet and flip a bit and look for that flip bit later. And that we're speeding up that packet format by removing one of the Diffie-Hellmans. So we think we should get a relatively fast network implementation there. So that's what we're up to. And thanks a lot for ChainSafe for all the heavy work. In particular, Elizabeth, who is unfortunately not with us. And if you have any questions, I am more than happy to answer them. That's it.
Is there a question for Mr. Harry?
Go for it.
Thank you. Have you got research on the number of nodes, how that scales, how speed scales with the number of nodes?
Well, the number of nodes.
Not for validation, just for the net in general.
Okay, so the question is the scaling for ETH2 validation or scaling for the mixnet? They're two different things.
Yeah, more for the mixnet. Yeah,
so the mixnet, the thing with the mixnet is if you look at it, the diagram is a little bit old-fashioned, but you can see that everyone gets 3 hops. So when we add more mixed nodes to the network, it's to handle more traffic. So it does something called horizontal scalability, similar to a website. It's your website's getting pounded by too much traffic. You set up another instance, and that absorbs some of the traffic. So we scale, but we scale this way, right? So it's vertical in this particular diagram. So we'd add another node there and another node there. And so the amount of hops to the network remains constant at 3. So it really doesn't matter how many nodes are in the network. because we're not doing consensus among the Nym mixed nodes themselves. So all that matters is that you are going through 3 hops. And on that level, we believe that shouldn't really matter how many nodes are in the whole network, because everyone's divided into 3 layers and you're always getting 3 hops. So you should always remain around that 400 milliseconds of goodness, which is what we want to achieve ETH2 validation properly.
Do you not have like any gossip which slows it down? Like
No, we don't use
vulnerability or
gossip.
anything?
So it's more like Tor. We do have a little bit of element of gossip, but that gossip we have a little blockchain, which we call Nix. So one question is, when I use an anonymous overlay, how do I find the entrance to the, where is it? How do I find the keys for all the nodes and the IP addresses for the entrance? And that is maintained by Nym on a blockchain called Nix, which actually is running Cosmos, not Ethereum, because it's faster and we get finality very quick. But we only run consensus. We don't run consensus on that blockchain constantly. The mixed node itself only reorganizes itself every hour or so. So that means that because we want people to use the network and for it to remain, for this part of the network to remain fairly stable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's not like a big consensus problem. Any other questions? Go for it.
Is your main goal to protect validators against each other? So validators sabotaging each other, or just
Yeah, validators could sabotage each other, but also third parties could sabotage. Let me just thank Elizabeth here. All her work. There we go. Anyways, she did a lot of the heavy lifting here, but couldn't be here. The validators basically could sabotage each other, so that's one really good economic reason. Like if I DDoS your validator, then I may get the next slot, then I get the reward and you don't. That's great, haha. But also you can imagine outside adversaries attacking the Ethereum network. Maybe people that just don't like Ethereum. Maybe, who knows, Bitcoin maximalists just go on the attack against Ethereum. Who knows, governments, all sorts of things. Anything is possible.
But
So,
the thing with governments, I have this the assumption about Tor that it's infiltrated by NSA, that most of the nodes are run by NSA. Is Nym any more resilient against this kind of infiltration?
yeah. Well, let's think about well, first the question is, is Bitcoin or Ethereum infiltrated by the NSA? So the answer, well, I mean, the NSA can just watch the traffic. And the question is, how much traffic do they watch? They watch a good chunk of it. And we know this from Bitcoin. I won't be surprised if it was the case with Ethereum, because the NSA won't do it directly. They will contract out a third-party firm. So in the case of Bitcoin, that firm, I believe, was Chainalysis, and it got revealed that Chainalysis was running a fairly large amount of Bitcoin full nodes in order so they could capture that peer-to-peer traffic. So the way the thing is, when I gossip, I'm sending you packets, you're sending someone else packets. Those packets are kind of being shipped around. And if I intercept a packet from you, let's say it's got a block on it, that's a block producing packet, I can think, well, maybe you're gossiping from someone else, so then I can watch the person that you got the blocks from you. So you can like trace the path through the peer-to-peer network to find the originating nodes. That's pretty easy because peer-to-peer networks are open networks. Anyone can run a peer, so if enough peers run the network, then they can get a large view of all the traffic. We have not done this for Ethereum, but we have done this for, I think, Lightning and Bitcoin. We actually did the stats on it. And if you want to know the exact stats of how many malicious nodes there has to be to see what everyone's doing, I think there's a paper by our chief scientist, Claudia Diaz, D-I-A-Z, and her student Piyush, P-I-Y-U-S-H, called On the Anonymity of Peer-to-Peer Topologies. That was published in a conference called NDSS, I think last year. So the answer is you don't need the whole network. You only need like 30 to 40%, and then you can see all the traffic. Now the question is Nym itself under attack? By saying how much traffic do you have to watch to figure out what Nym's going on? Well, Nym is surprisingly resistant to this, but because of reasons some people really don't like. Nym itself is not a peer-to-peer network. It is what you called a layered topology. So you have 3 layers of mixed nodes that are randomly assigned. And so the layering prevents people to some extent from just jumping in at any time. And the layering is re-randomized. And because I think there's 2 separate questions. Do they know who you're talking to? That's what you call an end-to-end correlation attack. Or can they decrypt your packet? So I'm sending encrypted packets in here, and they're coming out. And if in order to decrypt, to figure out what's going on, I have to know your whole path. That I can decrypt your packet if your whole path is malicious. So that means we currently have 500 mixed nodes. I capture your entire path, but your path is randomly selected through the mixed net. So I could only, even though I was very lucky, and I believe the stats are you have to capture about 80% of the network to be lucky with about a 50% chance, I would still have to basically, I would only capture one packet, and I could decrypt one packet, and maybe that packet, I might need a lot of messages or more than one packet, including Ethereum messages. The second question is, how about how many of these nodes themselves are compromised? I mean, that's always a good question. What we do to try to prevent compromise on those nodes is, you kind of got to make a bet that you're not starting in a fully compromised position. And we use a reputation system to determine, which I know is tokenized. A lot of people dislike that, but I think here people would understand that we have a reputation token so that the more mixing you do, the better your reputation is, and the people can delegate their tokens to you. And the one thing the NSA and other intelligence agencies have trouble doing is they have trouble faking the social network of a real human being. Because the NSA, all their nodes would come in together, and maybe they'd all befriend each other. They would maybe delegate stake to each other. But I think the chances of like the EFF or myself delegating to an NSA node is pretty low. So you can actually watch the social network of these kind of stake nodes and use that to kind of figure out, well, are a bunch of new nodes coming in, and who are they already friends with? And who do they know, and who do they not know? And it's hard to fake organic development of a friendship graph, even with LLMs. So it's called a power law graph, and they kind of stand out a bit with this kind of small world effect. Any other questions?
Is there another question?
Oh, one more.
Just a quick one. I don't think this is working. Just a quick one. I'm not so familiar with the protocol, but one of the things that Tor has suffered from was the ingress and egress nodes having knowledge of traffic.
Yeah.
With this architecture, doesn't this have the same sort of vulnerability? Is there anything for the first or the final layer of the mixing nodes to then have some idea of who the originator of this node is?
You suffer the same vulnerability, and maybe let's see if I can get one of the Zoom, one of these to work. But effectively, the vulnerability is a bit different insofar as that Nym does what we call per packet routing, while Tor does a stream of packets. So in Tor, all your packets are coming out the same exit nodes, and then it changes out every 10 minutes. You roll over, you get a new circuit's created through Tor. So that means that the adversary gets like a stream of 10 minutes of traffic, and they can correlate that against your stream. Now with Nym, it's a bit different. So you do have exit nodes, but with every packet, the exit node changes. So that makes the adversary gets one packet from one exit node, one packet from another exit node, and the packets aren't coming out in the same order. Because they're not coming out in the same order, that's what gives you resistance against this kind of two-sided statistical disclosure attack, because the adversary gets one side, they see you're sending traffic in, and they kind of see the pattern of that traffic coming in. You can add some cover traffic here, and that does help, and we do add cover traffic. But the real key is that it's much harder to do the statistical disclosure attack on the exit nodes, because each packet, the packets aren't coming out in the same order. There's fake packets, and each stream of traffic comes through not one, but many exit nodes. Now, that being said, are there probably attacks there? Yes, there are. And again, we should have a paper out on those attacks at some point, and we're trying to understand how bad those attacks are. Off the top of the cuff, they should be less bad than Tor, but they will exist. There will still be, whenever there's any data, it's impossible to make something which is like completely statistical correlation free. There's always a little bit of leakage because the real world has leakage. Now there's another interesting question. One interesting question could be, let me try to think about how to say this. Like, there's people watching, they're passive observers, and then there's like maliciously active nodes. So you had a mixture of maliciously active nodes. How dangerous that is, right? And these are different kinds of attacks, and we're still trying to analyze them all. I would say that one thing a lot of people are worried about Tor is there has been a lot of DDoS attacks on Tor recently. I know people here run a hidden service or use hidden services, but what's happened, at least Roger Dingledine from Tor believes that the various dark markets are attacking each other, like trying to knock Alphabay out or whatever. Nym does not have this problem because essentially everything that comes to the network to some extent anonymized. And those particular DDoS attacks are attacks on what's called distributed hash table inside Tor, which kind of redirects you to the onion service or the hidden service. And we don't use a DHT. We use source routing, but it's randomized, basically. That may have been too much of an explanation. So, but anyways, the answer is yes, there'll be some attacks, but will they be better than Tor? Yes, they will be better than Tor. And we are still trying to figure out the exact danger routes for those attacks. Anything else? Okay, well, thanks a lot. And please, if you're interested in hacking on Nym or P2P, libp2p, or getting down to the network stack of Ethereum and the Ethereum validators, do get in touch and follow us for the big announcement of when we're fully integrated as an option to Lighthouse, which means people can easily turn on privacy and still run Ethereum validators. And we're quite excited by that. Take care.